like to call this meeting to order. It is 1:33. Thank you. And if we could have roll call, please.
All right. Chair Hardy.
Present.
Vice Chair Ragsdale.
Present.
Director Chambers.
Present.
Director Duncan.
Present.
Director Pierce.
Present.
Director Schneider.
Present. Do you need me to identify where I'm at?
It is it's on our agenda, so we're fine. We just need to ask if there's anyone over 18 that's in the room with you.
At this point in time, there is no one in the room with me, and it's highly unlikely anybody under 18 will be here at this time.
No, over 18.
Well, then they could be, but no, there is no one here.
Thank
All
you.
right. Director Stevenson.
Present.
Director Bella.
Here.
And Director Zichterman.
Here.
All present.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, especially during this busy season. Just to let you know, there is nothing new, so closed session is canceled, although we put it on the agenda in case needed. We're able to do that, so I will catch you up very quickly. There's nothing to know. Now you are caught up. Thank you. All right. Consent calendar. We have approval of the minutes from the October 8th meeting. Any comments or a motion? Yes, Tom, please.
I move approval. Second.
And, okay, that was Tom Chambers, and that was Louise who gave us our second. Any comments? I do not see any, so we will take and it has to be a recall, not recall. It has to be a verbal vote, because we do have someone online.
Chair Hardy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ragsdale.
Yes.
Director Chambers.
Yes.
Director Duncan.
Yes.
Director Pierce.
Yes.
Director Schneider.
Yes.
Director Stevenson.
Yes.
Director Bella.
Yes.
Director Zichterman.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The motion does pass, and I appreciate your help with that. Okay, we're up to number 4, public comment. I believe we have some cards here. Thank you. We have the public. Peter Druckmeyer with the Yosemite River Alliance. Oh, I apologize. I'm looking. It is under 4 and 6A. Thank you. So I'll keep that. And if you can, yeah, I can show you where to turn that on. There we go, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Peter Dreckmeyer, Policy Director for Yosemite Rivers Alliance, our new name, no longer Tuolumne River Trust, but same organization. Over the years, I've tried to work with BAWSCA to get better information into your hands and the public's hands, and it's been very challenging. I used to ask Nicole Sankula, would BAWSCA ever consider challenging the design drought? And she said, well, we need to wait and see how the climate change study comes out. And it came out, and no clear direction in precipitation moving one way or the other. And they don't explicitly say it, but you can take a look at all the numbers, and the design drought might happen once in 8,000 years. So not a great thing to plan for, especially when we're concerned about affordability. With the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement, BAWSCA's point for many years was, well, we just want to give it a fair shake. We want this scientific basis report to come out, and we can judge whether it would work or not. And it's very clear from the report that the TVA focuses on items that are not limiting factors. So limiting factors are the things we need to address first. And they are temperature, water temperature, flow, and rearing habitat, floodplains. What is not right now a limiting factor is gravel and spawning habitat. And that's what the SFPUC and irrigation districts focused on last winter. It was pretty good timing. We had spring run Chinook salmon in the river this year. They spawned successfully. There are babies now. And the question is, are those babies going to survive? and my prediction is most of them will get eaten by bass. They don't have refugia. So that was one of the big pushes for the TVA, was that we would increase juvenile salmon by 150%. So that's 150% more bass food, and that population grows, and they're the problem. So I would love to see BAWSCA have a workshop on the TVA. If folks think it's a reasonable alternative to the Bay Delta plan, can make the case. We will make the case that it won't. The affordability is a huge issue, and I'm glad you've taken it up. You've done a good job with that. The recent water supply agreement amendment, I think it undercalculated the impacts to the BAWSCA customers that are not minimum purchase organizations. It could be up to 6.34 million gallons per day that is not sold to the SFPUC, or purchased from the SFPUC. And that's a value of $17.75 million per year. So that money would have to be covered by other ratepayers in San Francisco and in the BAWSCA territory. I calculated for my city of Palo Alto, it could be $140,000 a year. Now, that's the high end. But I think that the numbers that were presented by BAWSCA were undersold what the cost would be.
Excuse me, Chair, 3 minutes are up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak during our public comment? Yes, I do have a name, Lane. Okay, yes, you didn't say, you had a specific subject, I just didn't know what agenda item.
Oh, sorry.
Right, Lane, we do have an agenda item covering this
6A.
topic, so it'd probably be more appropriate for you to.
Okay, I'll wait till 6:08.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll try and catch you for that, okay. Thank you so much. Wanted to make certain I didn't cut anyone off. All right, thank you. We will move on to our action calendar, a proposed fiscal year 26-27 bond surcharge. And Christina, I think this is yours.
Sure. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chair Hardy. Good afternoon, everyone. So the surcharge setting is the annual process that BAWSCA does to meet our financial obligations associated with the revenue bonds the agency has issued. The surcharge collected are used to pay for the debt service payment, to reimburse the bond administration expenses, and also to replenish the stabilization fund. At this time, based on the review, no replenishment is necessary. So the proposed total 26-27 surcharges reflects savings from the original prepayment program in 2013 and also the recent refunding in 2023. The total average net present value savings are approximately $6 million a year from 23 to 34 until when the bonds will expire. So the proposed surcharge are calculated based on the bond indenture, and the methodology used is same as last year. Thank you. So this table presents the proposed surcharge by agency, and it's also shown as table 1 in the staff report. The proposed total surcharge for 26-27 are $21,871,812, which is approximately $7,000 less than last year's. And this amount, it's equivalent to 33 cents per CCF or 143 per acre foot, based on the latest PUC's wholesale water use projection. Next. So the recommendation is that the committee recommend the board to approve the proposed 26-27 bond surcharges as presented in the staff memo. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I will say it's nice to see something hasn't had to change. And a lot of this was a lot of your good work and running numbers and being very aware of what the realities are. I personally appreciate that. Any questions or comments? Remember to just turn your, thank you, Peter, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Christina, for the update. Just remind the group here of what is that methodology, just so we have that in our backdrop.
Basically, the methodology, has been described in the bond indenture. So every year, how the surcharge is calculated, which is based on the debt service payment for each year minus any credits the agency decides to determine appropriate to be considered next year based on the excess funds. For example, this year we have included approximately $170,000 excess funds to be credited to the agency because of the interest earnings from the funds. We did the pre-refunding, so it's a forward refunding back in 2023. At that time, the interest earnings were really high when the funds were sitting in the escrow account. We earned some interest earnings. So we have determined over the years what's the appropriate amount to be applied each year, just to have a stable credit methodology. So 170,000 to determine to be appropriate, and then after that we allocate the debt service payment to each agency based on the agency's actual water sale in 24-25 as a percent of the total wholesale water purchase from SAPUC. That's the main methodology. In addition to that, we also consider a true-up adjustments from 23-24 because for the 26-27 surcharge setting, we used 24-25 actual purchases, which is the latest the whole year actual purchase available to us. Then in order to make sure we are charging everybody based on the actual purchases, so we include a true-up adjustments applied to 24-25 when the 24-25 surcharge were set based on the 22-23 actual sale. So if there is any the difference between how much we charged you for 24-25 based on projection and how much we should have charged you based on the actual, that's the true-up adjustments applied in 26-27 surcharge setting. So that's the main methodology we have been using.
Appreciate that. That's excellent.
Thank you, and I'll remember to be a little more formal. Director Stevenson, thank you.
It's quite all right. I'm in my home territory.
You feel at home. Good. Glad you do. Yes, and I have Director Snyder online. You had a question or comment? You're still muted.
Mute.
There you go.
Thank you. I talked to Mr. Smeagol a little bit yesterday. I just want to make sure I have a clear explanation to my district of the true amounts on that. So it's, if we could have one statement that we agree with, Director or Mr. Smeagol, it was the true-ups happened because our customers used less water. Therefore, at the end of the season, we're paying a little bit more in true-up because of conservation. Or is there a better way of saying that?
I'm going to let Christina say that exactly, but
Okay.
it's intended to be proportional.
I'm writing it down word for word, the best way to say that.
Yeah, turn on. Thank you.
So for Millbrae, so we actually included a positive adjustment amount of $50,000 for fiscal year 24-25. That means we have undercharged you $50,000 back in 24-25. So that also means in 24-25, Millbrae, compared to all the other agencies as a percent of your water sale, as a percent of the total wholesale purchase, you actually purchased more than how much you have purchased in 22-23. That's why, given our 24-25 surcharge were based on the 22-23, we actually undercharged you for 24-25. That's why we are collecting back the undercharge for 24-25, which is $50,000.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to figure out how to explain it is tricky. It's almost like reverse of what we're thinking, but thank you for that.
Okay.
Appreciate that, Director Snyder. I don't know if you have to lower your hand on your end. Okay, thank you. Because The next time you raise it, I want to be able to tell. Thank you so much. I do not see any other, do I have a motion? Yeah, Director Schneider, please. I mean, Director Pierce, so sorry.
Sure. I'll make
Yeah, let's get
There we
it. Thank
go.
you.
the motion for board approval of the 26-27 bond surcharges as presented.
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, and that's Director Vila that seconded that. Thank you so much. So that goes as our recommendation to the rest of the board. Yes, please?
You will vote on that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll vote on the recommendation. That's the point I wanted to make. All right.
Okay.
So the recommendation, please.
I'll take
Roll
the
call.
roll. Chair Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ragsdale,
Yes, and appreciation for the explanation and the great staff report. Thank you.
Director Chambers,
Yes.
Director Duncan,
Yes.
Director Pierce,
Yes.
Director Schneider,
Yes.
Director Stevenson,
Yes.
Director Vella,
Yes.
and Director Zichterman.
Yes.
Thank you. And that recommendation will be passed on to the board then. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, we're up to reports and discussions. 2025 Regional Water Demand and Conservation Study. And this looks like it's Danielle's. Thank you. I was teasing Danielle about why we didn't have a ball drop and confetti and dancing on the tabletops over all her great work. And we have a tier 2 in case anyone hasn't heard that the tier 2 did pass. Thank you so much.
I do want to say one thing before we get started here, and that is what I was recently told was that this has not been a topic that we've discussed very much at the demand studies in the past. We do them relatively frequently, every 5 years or more, and it's an interesting time for demand studies. Obviously, the demand study that we have here that Daniel will share with us has a little bit different result than in the past. Thought it was important to share in the context of the urban water management planning efforts that are going on. So I'm excited about it, and I hope you all are excited about it as well. So Danielle has a good presentation here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent, thank you. Good afternoon, board policy members. I'm excited to present the results of the 2025 Regional Water Demand and Conservation Study. We are in the process of finalizing the report and expect to have it out very shortly. We will notify you as soon as it is available. So yes, every 5 years, BAWSCA facilitates this regional study, which produces demand projections for each of the 26 member agencies over a 25-year planning horizon. These projections facilitate local and regional planning efforts like urban water management plans and BAWSCA's Strategy 2050. But I do want to note that the projections presented in the final report are not the official final projections for each individual agencies. Generally, an agency does not consider them final until they've been adopted by their governing bodies, which is typically in the urban water management plans, which are not due for another 6 months. And so some agencies do make changes in between then. So we do want to just direct folks to those agencies' planning documents for the most current official numbers. Next slide. So through a competitive bidding process, BAWSCA selected Hazen and Sawyer to help with the 2025 demand study. They are a leader in water demand forecasting and management. They've worked with more than 25 water agencies across the country on multiple water demand projections. They've led and supported 8 research projects with the Water Research Foundation on topics that are really important to water agencies. We do have Luke Wong here. He's across the way. He was the project lead from Hazen and Sawyer, and he can answer any of your difficult technical questions today. And I do have a photo here of Jack Kiefer. He was a key member on the team. He was given an award in 2022 for his innovative research that water agencies can apply to improve planning and resilience. So we had a really great team. So the baseline demand, or sorry, I just want to note that this is a really significant effort on, not just on behalf of BAWSCA, but really your member agencies. They put a lot of time over the last year and a half to provide and verify input data, to also for assumptions and the results. So I do want to give a big thanks to all the work that they've put into helping with this study. The baseline forecasts, they reflect demographic growth projections that are approved by each of your agencies. They should be reflective of what's in other documents that have been approved, like citywide master plans, approved developments, or other planning docs. Additionally, the agencies opted to include a climate-adjusted temperature in the baseline scenario, and the Hazen team ensured that best practice efficiency standards were also used for the conservation accounting. I also want to note that the demand study is not intended to be a precise prediction of the future. Like I said, it's based on these agency-approved assumptions, but we cannot predict external factors that may have significant influence on demand, like droughts, a severe economic downturn, or maybe a global pandemic. Next slide.
Can't imagine why you have to mention
I wonder
that.
why. So the Hazen team used a hybrid framework that included econometric modeling and end-use conservation accounting. The econometric models explain the influence on key variables on historical water demand. These variables might be weather conditions, historic drought restrictions, socioeconomic factors, water rates, just to name a few. And then they forecast future demand based on specific values for those explanatory variables. For the conservation accounting, they quantify both passive savings, that's through codes and regulations, as well as active conservation measures. And this study had four main, there's a lot more work that went into this, but four main elements. So we projected baseline demand, quantified conservation savings, and then evaluated those baseline demands against state water use efficiency standards, and then finally we did scenario analysis. And I'll walk through each of these, but the final report will provide a lot more detail. Next slide. So for the conservation accounting, we use the Alliance for Water Efficiency Water Conservation Tracking Tool. It's a handful. This tracking tool was customized for each of the agency's service areas. So this includes population, housing units, implementation of past conservation programs. And what it does is it helps agencies evaluate the remaining potential and cost effectiveness of conservation measures. And so they worked with the Hazen team to develop a custom suite of individually of conservation programs to apply to their demand models. Next slide. So the baseline demand projections are based on a common set of assumptions across the agencies for demographics, climate conditions, economic conditions, and conservation or efficiency. So I'll walk through briefly the general assumptions here, but the Hazen team did work with agencies to adjust published regional assumptions to fit local realities. So it's very agency specific. Next slide. So for demographics, that's population, housing, and jobs. Those were generally assumed to follow the Plan Bay Area 2050 growth rates, but agencies, planning departments, or cities did adjust these. Next, thanks, you're on top of it. So housing, for housing growth, the majority of new housing is expected to occur in the multifamily sector, with the available land area for housing remaining constant. This means that the housing density will increase, which tends to have a lower influence on demand as smaller lots use less water for irrigation. Next. As I mentioned, the agencies chose to include a climate-adjusted future. They're using the CalAdapt modeling, but we held precipitation at historic averages. For the economy, they typically keeping constant with historic levels, so that's a mix of industries, the regional rate, a change for GDP and unemployment. As I mentioned, conservation, we had the compounding passive conservation effects I mentioned on the previous slide, and the agency-specific conservation portfolio. And for pricing, the water rates were assumed to remain constant with the rate of inflation, but a few agencies did have already approved rate increases, which the Hazen team was able to build into their models. Next slide. So just have a few slides here to show some of the demographic change briefly that is assumed by these projections. So over the next 25 years, population is expected to increase 37%, next, housing is expected to increase by 40%. You can see the flat line is the single-family housing. The one that's growing, as I mentioned, is in the multifamily sector housing. Then for jobs, there's about 34% more jobs expected to be created by 2050. Next slide. So this chart here provides the demand projections. I'm not going to go with colors because they're a bit hard to see in this light, but the top bar is the baseline demand with no conservation measures. The middle bar is demand with passive conservation only, and the lower bar at 220 MGD by 2050 is passive demand with passive and active conservation savings. So we do see a moderate increase over the 25-year planning horizon, but with all the demographic growth that you saw in the previous slides, it's really tempered by passive and active efficiency savings. Next slide. Okay, so with that baseline demand, we wanted to compare to projected urban water use objectives. So you may remember the Making Conservation a California Way of Life. That may have stuck with you. This was a long-term framework for water use efficiency, and part of that framework regulates 4 sectors in an aggregate budget. So those 4 sectors are indoor residential water use, outdoor residential water use, commercial, industrial, and institutional water use associated with dedicated irrigation meters, and water loss. So each agency has a locally specific budget for each of these 4 categories, but they are regulated as a whole. So in other words, an agency may exceed their indoor residential budget, but keep an aggregate under, and they'd still be in compliance. And so the idea of this is to help agencies plan in the future. Are they meeting what we estimate to be their objectives? Next slide. So this chart here shows the projected demand, those 3 gradually increasing lines, which I won't describe again, you recognize them, compared to the aggregate urban water use objective. Sorry, I just want to note that those demand projections are only for those 4 regulated sectors I mentioned on the previous slide. And then the purple, which you can't see, is the going in the opposite direction. It's decreasing over time. And you might ask, why are there 2 lines? So in the outdoor budgets for both residential and commercial CII with dedicated irrigation meters, one of the variables is local weather and climate conditions. And so all other things being equal, an agency in a hotter, drier part of the state will have a higher budget than an agency in a cooler, wetter area. So we've created this band based on historical data provided by or developed by the Department of Water Resources, and it gives the agencies an idea of the range of their objectives. So I think the key takeaway here is that the majority of agencies are well positioned to meet their water use efficiency requirements in this area. There are only 4 of the BAWSCA agencies that are expected to exceed their budget between 2025 and 2050. And that conservation, and both passive and active, will be an effective tool to help those agencies maintain compliance. Next, great. Okay, so we completed a demand study, and inevitably we get comments about past demand studies. And so I thought it would be helpful to walk through some of the findings that we noticed here. I do want to mention again that these are not intended to be predictions. These past studies, or sorry, maybe I should introduce the chart. It might be a lot. So this is historic demand in the solid line. Then the dotted lines are demand studies going back to 2004. The solid shaded bars are drought years. And so we can see that, demand projections are going down over time, but wanted to call out a couple things. So next. So droughts are a significant downward driver of demand. In between droughts, demand has tended to increase, but it has not tended to rebound to pre-drought levels. Next. One more. These are a little hard to see here, but the slope of the demand projections, so you can see the 2022 study and the slope of the 2025 study are here, are becoming flatter over time. I think this is as conservation and efficiency becomes really permanent, it continues to offset those projected growth in demographics. I think one more. Excellent, okay. So the last study was an update in 2022, and the first projection year was 24, 25, I believe. And you may notice here, it gets called out, is about 15% higher than actual demand for that fiscal year. I do want to note that the 2022 study, the data that was collected for it and the analysis was completed before the last drought. And so it doesn't include that reduced demand, which I think you see very clearly reflected here in the 2025 study, which the most current data was up through the last drought. Next slide. Okay, so with that past slide, I think it's clear that demand projections are subject to a lot of uncertainty based on the assumptions that are applied. We don't know how many people are going to move in and out of your service area. We don't know if it's going to be a hotter or cooler economy. One of the big questions that I hear on the news every day is data centers. Are they coming? Where are they going to be built? How much water and energy are they going to use? We also don't know what new technologies are going to be developed in the future and whether they'll be adopted at scale. So we recognize that there is inherent uncertainties. And next slide. In 2022, we tried to address this by conducting a scenario analysis. This provides a practical framework to assess these assumptions and to evaluate potential future conditions and what that would mean for water demand. Next slide. So we worked with the member agencies, external stakeholders, and the SFPUC over a 2-month period. We gathered feedback from them on what they would like to see for these future scenarios. And then we categorized those into these 4 general groups that align with the model inputs. So the first is demographic and development, then socioeconomic, conservation and pricing, and climate and other. And then we use this to create high and low bounds for these alternative scenarios. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through these relatively briefly. There's a lot of detail in the report, but this is a pretty high-level presentation here. So for the high bound on the demographic and development, we assume there would be more population, but we kept housing density the same as the baseline assumptions. On the low end, we assume there would be less population growth. Next. For socioeconomic, for the high end, again, high economic growth, low end, less economic growth. For conservation and pricing, for the high end, we assume less active conservation, but we kept water rates same as the baseline. And for the low end, we assumed higher rate increases and less non-functional turf. That's a new regulation your agencies are going to deal with. Next slide. And then finally, for climate and other, the climate for the higher end, we assumed a hotter and drier climate and high water use agencies. And then for the low end, we have wetter conditions and not a cooler climate, but just less warming. Next slide. Okay, so this provides our alternative scenarios. So we have a high at 264 MGD, a moderated high, the baseline, a historic trend scenario, the moderated low, and then the low end scenario at 155 MGD. So it really provides a wide range of potential future conditions. We see them really starting to deviate mostly about 2030. Next slide. So In summary, we are seeing water demand projected to increase gradually. This is the demographic growth is moderated by improvements in efficiency and additional conservation. Agencies are well positioned to meet their urban water use objectives, but particularly for those 4 that might exceed theirs, conservation will be an important tool. And then we want to continue to evaluate future uncertainty in water demands. And I've asked Luke to come to a microphone here because he's going to present. We've concluded the main tasks in the demand study, but we have an additional task that we're going to continue to work on over the next couple months. And Luke is going to share that information.
Thank you, and I apologize, I didn't catch the first name.
Luke Wong.
Luke Wong. Thank you so much, and I appreciate Tom getting him a microphone. And I know I got a bunch of questions. And I will say, Danielle really set the bar high because she said you could answer all of the technical questions. Go ahead, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me here. Appreciate it. And I'll do my best on the questions. Danielle, appreciate the introduction. So as Danielle mentioned, the kind of last optional task associated with our project is to really do some additional scenario and sensitivity testing around the impact of future drought restrictions. So what we show in this kind of conceptual graphic at the bottom of the slide here is just illustrating some just kind of an illustration of historical demand and how that has kind of changed given different external drivers, economic recession, different drought periods, and specifically the restrictions that agencies put on their customers in terms of using water during those periods. So as you can see from this concept, and you can see through the historical record in the area, is that when restriction levied on customers, demand tends to decrease. Customers respond to those restrictions and reduce their consumption. And as Danielle mentioned, what we've seen recently is that demand does not tend to come all the way back to pre-restriction levels. So we have a concept in our proposal that we may be able to leverage aspects of our econometric model to look at the impact of future drought restrictions on the projections that Danielle has already presented on. And we'll need to do this by making some assumptions around what the timing and severity of future drought events and what those restrictions coming from both PUC and agencies specifically here might be. So a bit of an intersection there with what might be happening from a supply availability side as well. So I think it should be a really interesting task in terms of further addressing and trying to quantify future uncertainty.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So you're saying your crystal ball isn't infallible?
It's not infallible.
Thank you. It's based on our best guess. I know I have a few questions, but first off, we have Director Snyder. You have your hand up. Questions for our expert or for Danielle, who is also an expert in her own way?
Thank you. First of all, fantastic presentation. So some of my questions are about the presentation. My first one, on almost one of the last slides where it showed climate and other together. Climate I get, Other, of course, is largely out of a lot of our hands, which you stated, but with the augment of AI and server farms and the water use, do you think it might make sense to separate out other that is basically an economic development function on that, those cities that are going to have AI servers on that, so that we can look at climate, which is a little bit out of our control, versus things that might be in our control. And for all of us who also have to talk about RENA, we're going to be fighting RENA numbers with AI use of water on that. So just an idea to throw it out there. My second one, and it was my first one when I read the report, is, okay, only 4 out of 23 agencies and only a small number. The first thing I'm going, is that my agency? If that's a secret, I get it, but how will the agencies be known? And how will we know if we're adjacent to an agency that might need support, that as we plan our own local activities, is there a way we could expand our plans to include those? For example, if Millbrae has a flooding problem, but we can capture stormwater to help San Bruno replenish its aquifers, to me, that's a win-win. So would this study look at something like that? And then my third one was, and I think I've been bringing this up a little bit, is all of our agencies are different. And what our actual retail customers pay can vary, most likely considerably, across our 26 agencies. Some agencies, by design, have the ability to supplement for low income or fixed income, and some of us don't. And I think I'm going to actually dive into this for Millbrae, given our situation with SFPUC. But would it, or is there a place to look at that, of which are those agencies most at risk to not being able to take care of their fixed income and at risk or I'm sorry, I should read my own notes. All right, low income and at fixed income customers. So that's kind of how I looked at this. It all sounds great, but each one of us, 26 agencies, are different. Are there ways to dive into this at a more micro level to tell those of us who are at risk what we might need to plan for now? Not as a BAWSCA, but as individuals. Thank you.
Sure. So
Thank you, Director Schneider. Your light needs to be on.
is it not?
Oh, is it? Okay, I apologize.
Okay.
You can't see it from here.
Okay, so I'll take those one at a time. The first one had to do with the alternative scenario analysis and grouping conservation and other. There was an economic grouping. We separated out high water users because their water use, these data centers, their water use tends to be more aligned or estimated closely with, you're going to help me say this, basically other industries. We estimate how much water they use based on employment, how many people they employ. Data centers have a different ratio, and it's really about how much energy they use. And so we couldn't just change those mix of industries to incorporate these new data centers. That's why we separated them out specifically and put it into this other category, although the way that it was applied in the model was very as unique assumptions between conservation, and that is described in the final report. It's not, so you will see the assumptions and the impacts from those, separating out that group. As far as the urban water use objective, we are not publishing agency-specific objectives or their compliance. That's an optional thing they may include in their urban water management plans. We'll see whether they do that. As far as seeing how they comply, every January 1st, they publish publicly. So if you'd like to help your neighbors, you can always check the DWR website to understand that. And then the final question about how to help low-income customers and evaluating on a micro scale, I think that this provides your agencies with a tool to be able to do that in the next steps. So keep mentioning the urban plans. That's one big one. But projecting your future demand and evaluating the reliability of your water supply helps agencies determine what programs they need to have available, whether that's for their low-income customers or regulations, reliability. think that got to all of her questions.
We're getting a thumbs up that you answered the questions. You're wonderful. And remember to lower your hand because I can't do it. Director Stevenson and then Director Duncan, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Danielle, excellent report. And thank you to our consulting firm for the support. And I do see this as something vitally important ongoing. So maybe 5 years is the right cycle, but maybe that needs to change as some of the conditions change in that. And in particular, very interested in that drought sensitivity analysis moving forward. And I noticed obviously the recovery is an uptick, but not to return to pre-conservation levels. Be interesting to study that as to why. Is that fundamental demographic behaviors? Is that technology? What is fueling that? In terms of the sensitivity, I'd love to understand which of the conditions are the most explanatory of the projection differences. 100 million gallon per day swing between low and high is quite large, considered the historical trend, so I'd be interested in that. Question on the projections, maybe this touches both economic and housing, but we have a lot of state legislature changes here, and that is freeing up and removing local control of some of the growth rates projections. I'm wondering, is there data in some of the inputs into the analysis that includes a legislative perspective on potential housing acceleration, on free flow development, both on the commercial, retail, and industrial standpoint?
Thank you so much. Danielle, if you want to try and answer those.
I'm going to ping pong over to Luke for a second. Luke, why don't you answer the question about which variables are demand are most sensitive to?
Sure. Great questions, Director Stevenson. Really far and away the variables that it's most sensitive to are the demographics, right? I mean, so housing units, population, jobs. Those are the ones where there's there's really kind of like a one-to-one influence in terms of we project on rate of water use, and that gets basically multiplied by how many houses, how many people, how many jobs, how many accounts are going to be expected to materialize into the future. So those demographic projections are really critically important. It's a big driver in some of those differences.
And then for the state requirements on housing, I know that when the agencies adjust their demographic projections from the 2050 growth rates, some of them go down, but I believe Plan B Area 2050 would be RENA numbers, the regional needs. But you're talking about, are you, and so if that's what you're asking about specifically, then yes, they're included, but I know that there's other legislation that you might be referring to that I think is more specific.
Please turn on the, yes, we want
Sorry,
to capture that.
I just look at recent legislation, the general trend. Our RENA numbers are, relatively stable in terms of the expected growth on the year cycle, each RENA evolution. But there's a strong possibility that those are going to start to go up further. And, obviously it depends on both the private and the public cooperation, but I'm just curious if the 2050 included anything beyond RENA when it looks at legislative impact.
For the higher end scenarios, there might be slightly over RENA in that one. Just for the agencies who had assumed higher than RENA in their baseline, we didn't bring them down in the scenario. We just brought everybody else up to. So then in that way, they might have been just slightly over.
Okay. That
Appreciate it.
helps. Like I said, that crystal ball isn't perfect. Director Duncan, please.
Thank you. Danielle, very nice job on that. Really appreciate the presentation. I had a pretty easy question, or a simple question, and that is with DDW's water loss, real water loss requirements, their goals and their standards, is that taken into account in all of this?
Yes. Short answer, but we can elaborate.
That was a hard question. Wonderful. I will say, this is good advance promotion for the report that we're all going to be really excited to see and read.
We were very close to publishing, but converting from Word to PDF just created formatting issues. And so we will have it to you soon.
Not a problem. I will tell you that as technology has advanced, our expectations have been exceeded as to what's possible. And it makes it a bit of a difficult reality sometimes. Director Ragsdale, please.
Thank you, Danielle, for the excellent staff report and presentation just now. I had a couple of questions which are explained, but I'm just thinking when you modified a little bit for the full board, a couple of things that I had to read a couple times to understand, maybe to make it a little easier. One was the active versus passive conservation measures, maybe just some concrete examples there would be helpful. I think I have it down now, but I think that could be a good addition. And then the other is, it's explained, but then that a smaller single-family home is going to be using less outdoor water, in theory. But then when you get to the chart, the table 2, it's just like looking at it without thinking about that. It says keep housing density constant, makes for a higher demand scenario. And I think that's because of the smaller houses would use less outdoor water, but I'm not positive. But that's what makes sense there. Because when I first read that, I thought, wait, if housing density is the same, how does that make water use go up? Mm-hmm. But I think that's the answer, but I think that maybe that could be made a little clearer.
So for that one in particular, the baseline assumption is that housing density is increasing from current conditions. So assuming that it remains constant would not see those smaller lot sizes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So higher use than the baseline. And then for the passive and active, passive conservation, for an example, is the high efficiency toilets where the gallons per flush continues to go down by, from plumbing code regulations, where active measures are like a rebate for your turf removal. And thank you for the suggestions. We'll be sure to include them.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I've got my list of questions here. If we could go back to, he looks worried. Slide 29, please. Tom, if we could go back to slide 29. This is where I had most of my questions. There you go. Wonderful. When we talked about water loss, this is one of our 4 sectors, and I was wondering what you used as an assumption for water loss. I know I saw an overall number for the whole country and thought, oh, that's really not a very good metric. I'll get through them all and I'll let you hit these. All right, when we go to outdoor water use with dedicated irrigation meters for commercial, I know I went through our city report and found that cardboard manufacturing used the most water. And we have 55 data centers. So when everybody makes the assumption, I just came from the National League of Cities conference in Salt Lake, and a lot of people were having many, many questions about data centers. Now, our data centers have gotten better and better, and we're up to using, I just got to tour one of them. It's reclaimed water on a closed loop, and they're misting it. So they're very water efficient, as opposed to, as I said, the cardboard manufacturing, which is using much more. So when we talk about other, I think we have to be careful. It'll be fun to see who exceeded. I can't wait to see if we're not going to unveil that here, but that'll be lots of fun when we read the report and get to we get to know publicly who said that. So just if you could help me understand the water loss, and because I know we're up to 20% of our city water use is reclaimed water, so that would not be part of that water usage if we've done it correctly.
I'll let Luke, because he'll say it more succinctly than I will.
Thanks for the questions. So from a law standpoint, we worked with every single agency individually to understand, most recent, statistics associated with, water loss in their distribution systems. So, at the time that we collected data, the 2023 AWWA reports, that get done and provided to the state, every year. Those were, you can pull those down as a member of the public. So we were able to get those for all agencies that are required to report them, and for the folks that are not, we spoke directly with their member agency representatives, and got the most recent statistics associated with their best understanding of boots on the ground, what losses are, and did some verification against purchases versus production, to kind of help make sure that those seemed correct.
I'll just tell you the numbers off the top of my head. It was a book on Israel and the way they were using water, and that they were at 11% loss and got it down to 4%. And they were saying the U.S. was closer to 44%. But that to me is we're a very large country and have places where water is not an issue. So I wanted to see numbers that were more closer aligned to the western half of the U.S. where water is an issue. So I just was wondering approximately where you fell in.
Closer to 11.
11, okay.
Yeah, 40's pretty high.
And
Okay.
I
thought so too.
There's variation, I think one of the directors mentioned it already. There's a lot of variability, from agency to agency. I don't recall the overall average off the top of my head. We can get back to you on that. But it's not as high as 40%. It's substantially lower.
Add that, as Director Duncan mentioned, there are regulations on water loss, and they're expected to reduce losses. And then just as far as the high water users, I just want to clarify, we're only talking about outdoor water use for dedicated irrigation meters. Industrial use is an exempt category because it's generally proprietary information. But I can talk to you more about how that's addressed in the regulation on the side.
Thank you. Okay, I do have, I apologize, Director Vila, and then Director Pierce.
Just a little point of clarification about water usage. In my previous life, I had a team of inspectors that used to inspect kind of data centers, and I do understand that they are very, very efficient in water usage. But data centers, we had dozens of them all over the place. Cardboard manufacturing places, in my entire career, I only inspected one. So,
There you go. Well, we've gotten better and better. Director Pierce, please.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for a very dense and interesting report. I'd like to recommend that for the future, any chart has bigger lines, not just color, but triangles or something, because it made it difficult for me to absorb the information. So, and I know that you really want to get it out there, and I appreciate the colors, but it just doesn't work well with printed stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a relatively simple one. I'm wondering, could you just really briefly say how our agencies are going to use the survey? I know that they all contributed and that they have future planning needs for it, but just to reiterate that a little bit briefly, and then how will this report get used by the SFPUC? Is it things that they include in their planning? So that those are the two, and there's one more, but I can't read my writing at the moment, so.
I'll give you time to decipher. Okay, so the agencies they each received an Excel-based tool that projects water demand over the 25-year planning horizon. One of the great things of going with Luke is that this is a tool that's easy to use and change some assumptions. And so they can use this as, in 5 years, we have another drought, or we don't see population increasing as we expected, or, whatever variable, they can change those assumptions and see how that will change projected demand. So it's an evolving tool that they can use. As far as San Francisco, they will, once the baseline demand is done, the agencies provide their projected purchases. Those are provided to San Francisco for supply reliability analysis for the urban water management plans. They did include alternative scenario analysis in their current demand study following the popularity of BAWSCA's 2022 study. And so the historical trend scenario that we showed up there aligns with one of their scenarios. I don't think they're planning on using the final numbers in any of their planning documents, but I think it's just like for our agencies, it's a useful tool as we evaluate how conditions change over time.
Great, thank you.
And maybe just a reminder that the graphs that you saw were total water use, right? Not just water use from the regional water system, but from all sources.
Okay, thank you. That
You
that
see
helps.
at 220, that's not well in excess of our.
Right.
Of the
And I found
obligation
that
list.
confusing as well, because I was looking at, why is this 180 and why is this 220? And so it's that, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. If we could go back one slide, I was going to make the point. If you see it would help if the lettering was a little bit bigger.
This one I didn't have control over,
Yes,
but the rest
okay.
of them I
I
can.
understand. But some of our eyes are getting a little older. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you making the point, and we will be presenting this then to the entire,
A more condensed version.
in a more condensed version. Well, you guys get the fun one.
More condensed with bigger print.
Bigger print. That's always helpful. I do have two members of the public who would like to speak. Do I take age before beauty? Just teasing. So, should we take Lane first, please? And Lane, you put here that you're with the Sierra Club.
Yes.
Does that mean you're a member or you're speaking in their behalf?
I am a member and also a staff
Okay,
representative.
just want to make certain we're clear. Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Good afternoon, Chair Hardy and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for the thorough and informative presentation. My name is Lane, and I am here on behalf of Sierra Club California to urge BAWSCA to reassess its current demand modeling before it becomes the basis for another decade of planning. For years, BAWSCA's demand model, the DSS, has consistently overestimated water demand by more than 50% over a 15-year time horizon. These recurring errors matter. They shape the capital projects we pursue, the rates our communities pay, and the attitude BAWSCA takes towards flow protections in ecosystems like the Tuolumne River. Meanwhile, the long-term trend is unmistakable. Demand is declining. Conservation has been real, durable, and repeatedly demonstrated thanks to many of your efforts. Droughts and hotter weather have reduced use, not increased it. Our letter sent to you on December 4th and included in correspondence contains the details and a tested model describing the clear trend. Look, we don't expect your crystal ball to be perfect, but it benefits us all to identify consistent problems and consistent demand modeling errors. These inflated projections have consequences. They pull BAWSCA into unnecessary conflict with the Bay Delta Plan, a plan essential for restoring salmon runs and protecting the ecosystems that supplies most of this region's water. They also justify billions in new infrastructure and alternative supply projects that ratepayers must shoulder. We have an opportunity right now to realign planning with reality. To support that, we respectfully request that BAWSCA, and this committee in particular, take 3 concrete actions. First, establish a transparent working group to reconcile the different demand projections and ensure full access to data and model assumptions. Second, we request a board agenda item as soon as possible to reassess demand projections ahead of the next urban water management plan cycle. And third, collaborate with outside stakeholders to update BAWSCA's approach to the Bay Delta Plan. These steps will allow BAWSCA to plan with accuracy, protect ecosystems, and keep water affordable for the communities that you serve. Thank you again for your leadership and for your consideration with these actions. We look forward to engaging with you on this problem to ensure BAWSCA demand projections and budgeting work for ratepayers and ecosystems across your jurisdictions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lane. I appreciate your comments. Peter Druckmeyer, Yosemite Rivers Alliance.
I really appreciated the opportunity to participate in the stakeholder group for this. I thought Danielle did a great job, and Hazen was a good choice, and Luke was a pleasure to work with. I think that's a great model for other topics, maybe half-day workshop here and there. People can opt in if they want. One focusing on the design drought that has a huge impact on rates, and the other on the science behind the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement and the Bay Delta Plan. So the report says that the 2022 projections were off by, for 2025, for 3 years, were off by 15%. And that's huge, 3 years being off by 15%. The Master Urban Water Management Plan in 2020 projected that demand this year would be 216 for the regional water system. We got the Water Division final report yesterday. Sales were 187, and that didn't include 3 MGD of system loss in San Francisco, so deliveries were 190, and that's a big difference in 5 years. 216 projected, 190 was the actual. And the report also points out that the new projections for 2050 are 14% lower than the projections from 2022 for 2045. So we're definitely moving in the right direction, but we haven't nailed it yet. And in my estimation, the 2 areas where we're going to be wrong, maybe I won't be wrong, but are population jobs growth, which are based on ABAG. We have to remember that RENA numbers are for planning, and as Steve Ritchie has pointed out before, a lot of projects don't materialize or they move forward more slowly. So I'm glad that the study looked at Department of Finance, California Department of Finance projections as well. And the other is cost of water. The cost of SFPUC water is going up, but also a lot of local agencies have a backlog of infrastructure projects. In Palo Alto, our rates just went up 10%. And are expected to do that for several more years. In 2008, with the Water System Improvement Program, the projections for 10 years later, 2018, were 285. We had that compromise cap of 265. Actual was 196, 31% lower. So that was 30% less water sold by the SFPUC. And being a fixed cost system, rates had to go up, and they've quadrupled since 2008. And rates impact demand, and then demand impacts rates, and that's the financial death spiral, which I think we really need to be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate your comments. I do see that we have Director Schneider has raised their hand. Director Schneider, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's okay for us to comment on what the speakers have just said. That's correct?
Yes.
This is not like items not on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, thank you. Thank you to Sierra Club California. Full disclosure, I'm a former board member of Sierra Club California Executive Committee, so just throwing that out there. I appreciate the comments. I will tell you, as a city that recently has been half of it put in high fire risk. My greatest concern when we talk about conservation is that we are not watering our landscape enough on that, and that will come back as either making us more fire susceptible, or depending on the location, may make us more susceptible to soil subsidence. So my request to both Peter's group, and I did see the name change, and to the Sierra Club, whether it's Sierra Club California or the Loma Prieta chapter, come to me and let's talk about, I would like to see studies that say that water conservation is not creating more fire danger, is not creating subsidence. And then I'd be more open to the demand use of water and the actual reduction in water going on. I'm still, I'm not convinced. I'm very concerned that we don't take care of our trees, which we need for heat waves, given San Mateo County largely has never had to deal with heat waves, but we are dealing with them more and more now, et cetera, the climate change impacts, and we're going to need water for that. So just to our visitors on that, consider me, come to Millbrae. I'll do what I can to put on something here in Millbrae that we can at least start getting that data and those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Schneider. I do not see any other, and that is a report to us. We will anticipate the final production coming to us soon. Wonderful. 6B, mid-year 25-26 work plan, budget, and general reserve review. And this is Dr. Spiegel.
I'm still a director there.
Yeah, that's right. I've got to remember that. CEO Sean, just do it.
So, good news report here. Everything is going very smoothly with our work plan for 25-26. We have a couple of highlights, some of which I recently emailed you about, some of which we discussed at the last board meeting. But we're not recommending any changes. You'll notice this is not an action item. It's just a report. So we have no changes to request. No changes in our work plan, no changes in budget recommended at this time. The general reserve balance is roughly 1.7 million, or 31% of operating budget. That is on the high end, but within our guidelines, and that will come up later in another topic that we have. But all is looking good from the financial standpoint as well as a work plan standpoint. So what I hope to do here is just briefly cover some of the high points of our work plan, what we've been doing over the last 6 months and what we continue to do for the next 6 months, and talk about just a couple of the topics there. So happy to take questions if you have questions on others of the topics. And I am going to be very much at fault for Barbara Pierce about making this very small. So
You're already in trouble.
I don't know what we get. I know. All right, we're gonna. Unfortunately, I think this is the exact same thing we presented last year. And if you complained last year, we didn't hear you, or maybe your eyes were all better last year, or my eyes were better last year. But the first subtopic in reliable water supply is our effort to monitor capital improvements. So this is the WISA program. This is the capital improvement, 10-year capital improvement program. We're just starting now to get into the big work, which is an every other year focus on their 10-year CIP, both for the water enterprise and the HECI regional water. So we'll have a lot more to report on this as we go forward through February, March. But Tom's group takes a lead with San Francisco on that. Sort of by the end of the year and through the beginning first quarter of next year. The next topic, of course, it covers our major focus areas that we talked to you about a lot, which was our demand study that we just talked about, as well as the strategy project, Strategy 2050. So those are the major focus of the agency, and those relate to our reliable water supply and BAWSCA's strategy on the water supply. Our next page on water supply is conservation. It's really focusing on conservation. We have talked about, and I will emphasize that we have a great new conservation workshop program with the agencies that all of your agencies, I believe, have been participating in. that is joint. BAWSCA organized it, but it's jointly supported by Valley Water and BAWSCA to bring to the agencies an understanding of the new conservation as a California way of life. And that is going to be a series, I think, of 12 workshops, Kyle? Something about 12 workshops. So it's a pretty extensive set of conversations around all the implementation of that new conservation program. And we're clearly a leader in that area. On the next page, which is our focus on, focus on the
Sorry. I'm telling you, not now.
focus on our financial management. Very, very happy to report that we have a new Tier 2 plan that's in effect. We have a new water supply amendment that's in effect. This was a major workload for Danielle and for the team, really for probably about the last 4 years. And I showed up in the last year and helped Danielle a little bit in a couple of different cities getting this done, but really the heavy lift by her and Tom's team on getting all of your agencies to agree and getting that consensus put forward and approved both by San Francisco and then by the city councils and the various governing boards.
If this were colored, those should be gold stars.
We'll do better. We'll do better. That wall was not as far away last year.
That's true, they have
what I'm
moved
going
it.
with. The last bit on reliable water supply is, of course, our work on the Bay Delta and other outreach opportunities to coordinate with others. We have been actively participating in those and have been giving you updates on a monthly basis on what's happening in those areas. And of course, one of the highlights was the workshop on November the 5th on the draft scientific basis report for the Tuolumne. The next subject area is high quality water. That's an ongoing topic. We continue to facilitate a group which is focused on pulling the agencies together to meet on water quality topics with San Francisco. There's no major issues there. That is ongoing. Our fair price, and want to highlight here something that we mentioned at the board meeting a couple of weeks ago, that we actually caught up with our water supply wholesale water revenue requirement. We were, I think, 3 years behind by the time that I showed up here last December. We've caught up 2 years in this process. And for the 22-23 year, we applied an earlier fix that we had noticed about how San Francisco was allocating costs during a drought year, and that saved all of the agencies about $3 million in that calendar year. So that's a fantastic ongoing work. Really, Christina's yeoman work in that area to keep San Francisco honest in their accounting and make sure that they're following the water supply agreement.
Christina gets a gold star for that one, too.
We'll give Christina a gold star as well. And then 3 million gold stars. Every drought year, she gets 3 million gold stars. So, finally, on agency effectiveness, that's ongoing. We continue to work on those topics. There's nothing terribly important to report there. So that, again, everything's going well. I don't see a need to change the scope of work that we're doing. Definitely don't see a need to change the budget. The budget's on track. I'm happy to take any questions or comments anyone has, and I apologize again for putting up a screen that I can't read.
So what I'm hearing is a stay the course. Wonderful. Director Ragsdale.
Okay, only because we are on the topic of typeface and font size. So what I did is I just went back to the packet, which was helpful and bigger font. But I did notice, as I was trying to go through it while you were talking, that the title for each section is in the chart it looks like it's part of the prior section. So, for instance, high quality water, it looks like it's the last entry in the above topic. It's just a matter of deleting the lines. Yeah. But just in terms of, yeah, it's formatting, just deleting the lines so so the title for each section is clear that what it's.
I now
leading
see
to.
what you're talking about.
Yeah. I didn't even notice it when I was just reading through it,
Yeah.
because it was clear, but when I was looking through it now, trying to figure out where you were, I noticed, so, anyway,
Okay.
thank you. And I'm glad everything's going well, appreciate it.
And thank you. You are correct that the font is much bigger and easier to read here. That's where I read it. Director Pierce.
I want to thank you for the clarity. It's great to see it all moving ahead. And you are not alone. Tracking and formatting is the bane of everyone's existence who has to put together PowerPoints. And but I have learned from myself, if you put too much information on it, people's eyes glaze over, and it's really difficult to read. And I will give you a gold star if you make it bigger the next time.
I should have brought my stickers. Wonderful. I appreciate that. Is there any public comment on the report, on the work plan? I do not see any. Then we will go on. That is also informational, is the potential additional one-time payment to CalPERS to reduce BAWSCA's unfunded pension liability. There's an attachment in here. Christina, please.
Will do. So back in April, the committee asked staff to evaluate the agency's fiscal situation at the conclusion of 24-25 to consider using the unspent fund from the last fiscal year to fund an additional discretionary payment to CalPERS for the purpose of reducing the agency's pension liability. So to give some context, CalPERS allows the employer to make ADPs at any time, in any amount, and making an ADP during the fiscal year would not require an ADP to be made in any future year. So per the CalPERS latest actuarial report, BAWSCA's unfunded pension liability as of June 30, 2024 was $1.2 million, which is estimated to be paid off by 2043 based on a discount rate of 6.8%. However, because CalPERS had a very strong investment return at 11.6% in fiscal year 24-25, CalPERS now projects BAWSCA's unfunded pension liability as of 2025 to be reduced to $928,000, with estimated payoff year to be 2042, which is 1 year earlier. So as you see, just one exceptionally good investment year reduced BAWSCA's UAL by about $300,000. So that is a great example to remind us that UAL is an actuarial value, and it fluctuates over time due to a variety of factors that includes CalPERS actuarial assumptions and its actual investment performance.
Oops, sorry, didn't mean to. Thank you so much.
So this table is shown as Table 1 in the staff report. It illustrates the estimated results based on 5 alternative one-time payment options, ranging from $100,000 to $400,000, based on CalPERS projected 2025 UAL. So I have a lot of circles on this table to help you guys follow what I'm saying, but unfortunately the remote is not working, so I'm gonna rely on you. So BAWSCA's general reserve balance at the end of October was $1.2 million. Last month, because of the accepted financial statements, we know that the unspent fund from 24-25 was $501,000 and was deposited in general reserve at the end of November with that deposit. So now our general reserve balance is at $1.7 million, or 31% of the annual 25-26 operating budget. Per our general reserve policy, the guideline for the general reserve is at 20 to 35% of the annual operating budget. So based on the current amortization schedule, without making any additional payment, BAWSCA's projected 2025 UAL has been 87.5% funded, so without any additional payment. And currently, it's estimated to be paid off by 2043. So please note I said 2025 UAL to be estimated to be paid off by 2042. I didn't say unfunded liability. And that's because the unfunded liability fluctuates over the years, and it's either be in the future, there's always going to be a UAL, either positive or negative. It depends on how CalPERS experience compared to their actuarial assumptions. So instead of walking you through all the 5 options, I'm going to use option 1 and option 5 as an example. So if BAWSCA choose to make a one-time payment of $100,000 funded by the reserves, it would bring the reserve to budget ratio down to 29%, but still within the policy guideline. So the UAL is estimated to be paid off by 2039, 3 years faster, and the funded ratio would be increased to 90.2%. And the estimated present value savings would be about $17,000. For the payment of $400,000, the general reserve to budget ratio would be down to 24%, and the UAL is estimated to be paid off by 2033, 9 years faster than current CalPERS amortization schedule, and the funded ratio would be increased to 94%, and the estimated present value savings is going to be $56,000. And then the rest 3 options between option 1 and option 5 just follow the same format. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. As the next step, feedback on the potential one-time additional payment level is requested.
Yes. And in the general, we are here to help. We are not going to be giving a specific recommendation. So, and also to keep everyone awake, we're going to go around the table and everyone gets to give an option that they feel the strongest about, and staff will hear that, and that will play into the recommendation that will go directly to the entire BAWSCA. So I will start with Director Duncan. Good morning. He looks excited, I can tell.
So I am very much in favor of paying down these unfunded pension liabilities. I don't really know what we should recommend to the overall board. I'm thinking 5 options seems kind of much, and it seems like maybe we should come up with A, B, C, a 0, some other value, and a high value, and then that would be enough for discussion. But in general, I am very much in favor of doing this.
Thank you. I too like the idea of chipping away at this, but also if you listen to Christina, it was because we held back and do have this, it lowered because CalPERS did so well this year. So that does lead into the argument of not paying it all off all at once. So thank you, I appreciate that. Staff is hearing this. Director Zigerman.
Thank you, Chair. I kind of look at this as return on investment in a way. What's the biggest bang for your buck? I like option 3 because the subsequent options 4 and 5 are more money but don't seem to have the more significant impact on when we pay it off. So I'm at the middle, but I think 3 is the way I'm leaning.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. Director Ragsdale.
When I initially read the report, I thought 4. I loved 4, but I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a financial person. I'm not an investment person. I just kind of was focusing on the percentage, the reserve. I'm a policy person. So the reserve policy of the 25, I felt comfortable with that in the 20 to 35% range. But I really don't have a strong feeling, except I like the idea of doing some paying down.
Thank you.
Can I add
Yes,
something?
please.
Just to add something, it was in the staff report, but I want to make sure we include it as part of the discussion. Oftentimes, the BAWSCA board chooses at the the setting of rates and the setting of a budget to use some of the general reserve as a way to buffer increases in budgeted fees to the agencies. And so just to keep that in mind, there's two potential purposes for an excessive amount of budget over the bottom of it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification as well. Director Vila,
Yes, I am not an accountant either, but
but you play one on TV, just
I do.
teasing.
I play one on TV, yes. But I do have investments, and I'm an investment kind of guy, and the return of an investment is very hugely important to me. And as soon as I saw this, option 2 came out right away, only because it will not affect our reserves by that much. We'll still be in the ballpark, and the return seemed to be the most advantageous. So, option 2 will be the one that I would say we should go with.
Thank you so much. Director Pierce, please.
Hi, we seem to not have the money crowd. Perhaps they're on that side of the room, I'm not sure. I kind of liked option 2 because it left us with 27% reserves, and we've worked so hard to get our reserves within a good area, and I really would like us not to have to raise our rates to our agencies, and so I want to make sure that we're able to do that. And in the past, we've had to raise our rates to add back to the reserve, so I was just cautious about that. And this way, it seemed like you got the benefits of both, and I'm always about bigger pies.
Thank you so much. Director Stevenson, please.
Thank you. I might be the contrarian, but
That's okay.
there is some financial strategy thinking that trying to bring down your unfunded balance isn't necessarily a good strategy. It's like to keep it at an 80% level purely because of the fluctuation. So like 1 year is great, and if you think about the net gain, we made $300,000 more than we were budgeting for. That's a benefit already. And we also have a policy around reserve that, 25% is now maybe a little bit tight as it relates to protecting against a down year. This is the same thinking we do on council. And I'm also not a financial analyst or things, but we have a couple on our council that are. So my vote is nothing.
Okay. All right, thank you. Director Chambers, please.
My feeling, the most important number that we should be looking at is the general reserve percentage. And I think that, 31% is at the high level. I think we need to leave our CEO some flexibility, so I don't want to get it too low. And my initial idea is the middle of the 20 to 35% window, which really is about 27.5%, but I'd go for option 2.
Okay.
Just because it's I think it's a good compromise, gives him some money in case he gets budgeting problems for next year. It gives us some option if we need something in there, and we're not down at the bottom close to 20%, which I never want to be. I mean, I was looking at some of this history, and boy, that was really kind of scary back in the aughts of the 20s, when we got down to 11% or 8% reserves. Not good. So let's stick with 27% or option 2.
Okay, thank you. Director Snyder, please.
I need to learn more from Director Peter, but option 2, I think it keeps us consistent with what we paid the previous year, so there's some logic to that. 27% is getting a little on the high side, but given the economy we're in, I'm willing to put a little bit more money aside. I wish the returns were a little bit better. I tried to do the math on percentages, but option 2.
Okay, thank you so much. I will say I also had selected option 2. I could be talked into 3 if I could see, and I do love numbers. I taught math, I'm a chemical engineer, and running a lot of percentages, I liked option 2. I think that it gave us what we needed, but also gave us a lot of options. So you've heard our consensus. Staff has been taking this into consideration. I do appreciate it because I think it's important to hear from everyone. Please.
It's a safe option too, I think. It's a safe option.
Yeah, I have no, just additional comment, no problem funding and paying down unfunded balances. I just would caution that 1 year at that level of return hasn't been seen in a long time. And unlikely, so I'm glad we still use the 6.8 discount rate. But I'm fine with option 2 or whatever the consensus views.
We do hear somewhat of consensus, but I do think we've kind of landed in a good place.
Okay, we'll work on this and bring a proposal to the board meeting in January with a couple of options there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say, the policy board, I appreciate the extra time you spend and that you realize that when you have 26 entities who are maybe not quite as engaged as all of us, that the voice coming out of here is very loud. And I appreciate that and the thoughtfulness.
Dan's got another.
Yes, Director Schneider and then Director Chambers.
I'm sorry, and I can't remember which director said, I always think it's a good idea to give the full board some options and to take it from 5 to 3. So whomever said that, I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. We can show them some extremes, yes.
And
Director Chambers.
I would also say that the majority of the board of 26 seem to want to consider doing this when we talked about our budget last time. So I think we should come up with, give them our recommendations and then let the board decide.
Yeah, we just don't have this as an action item. That's why I did it more of as a consensus and for everyone to put their oar in. Wonderful. Appreciate that. And staff, I do appreciate that you listen very carefully to us. CEO reports.
Great. So I was just talking about the mid-year update on our current budget and work plan. We're coming up on the next budget and work plan. And just to remind you all of that process, we will have a planning session at the January board meeting where we're looking for ideas, topics, work plan items that might not have been included in this year's work plan, that maybe things that could go away or things that could be added or changed. So we'll remind the board in advance of the meeting that that's going to be a topic there, in hopes that we can have a fruitful discussion. And then as we go along, of course, then in February and March, we further develop that with the BPC and the board, and finally adopt the budget in May, as you see here. So, and again, we're kind of looking out. We realize we have a Strategy 2050 project, but we identify that, we can look further than that if we want to. Obviously, it's a bit of a transitional year because we're intending to be done with the strategy project at the end of the calendar year. And so there may not be a lot of new topics that come up within this, in this cycle, but I certainly expect to see a lot more new topics or changes in topics as we get the results and digest the results of the strategy project. Because I do think both on the actions and the project side, there's going to be some things that we want to change about what we're doing. So it may not be this year, but it's certainly going to be next year when we start thinking about that. I also have a quick update on water supply conditions. They continue to be very strong, although I'm sure everyone's noticed that it hasn't rained in a few weeks. It's
supposed to on Monday.
It did rain pretty significantly in October and November. The chart here that you see is precipitation at Hetchy, the red line, so we're above normal precipitation. That is, you can also see that in our bar chart. So October and November were significantly above averages. This is just the precipitation up in the mountains. In the Bay Area is fairly similar. And this data is only through November 30th. So If it were through today, it would look the same, because there hasn't been any December precipitation, but that wouldn't have changed very much. But still, a pretty good start to the year as far as those months go. The snowpack, wouldn't expect too much snowpack, but there is a little. Obviously, the watershed's at a pretty high elevation, so there is some snow in the watershed. That's the report on that. And Bay Delta, again, it hasn't been a long time since we last talked about Bay Delta. Just a reminder that after the workshop that was held on November 5th and the comments that were received by November 7th, the state board's gonna review and revise the scientific basis report draft. And we expect them to go through a number of processes there, whether it's a new environmental document or an updated environmental document, as well as an updated scientific basis report. I would expect to see those mid-year in 2026, maybe as early as April or May, but we'll keep you all informed about that. And there's no update really on the FERC process, so I think that is my report.
So you're saying the saga continues?
It continues out of our hands, out of our control, waiting for the next steps. We'll let you know about the next steps. So that's my CEO report. I'm happy to take any questions on any of those topics. Anybody has any?
Excellent, thank you. Maybe no news is good news. And it's supposed to rain on Monday. I did look it up. It's because I prayed for no rain because I was in charge of a historic home tour last weekend, so it's all my fault. But now it's okay. It can rain. All right. Any questions, comments? You can just see our next policy meeting is February 11th here, and our next meeting in January is, shame on me, I should have remembered to look.
And you've got director comment.
Oh, yeah. It is in January. Think of the third.
January 15th, I believe.
15th, yes, third Thursday, I was gonna say. Director Snyder, you had a comment or question?
Didn't know if we were on agenda item 10, comments from members.
Yes.
Okay. It is my understanding that Assemblywoman Diane Pappin, who is also chair of the Water Committee for the State Assembly, has sent a letter to BAWSCA, and I would like to see that agendized for discussion for the people who have not had the privilege of reading the letter. Basically, she is encouraging SFPUC and Millbrae and BAWSCA to come up with a win-win on their plan on shutting down our one hardware store and critical retail sales tax and property tax on that. So I, as a board member, have asked for this to be agendized. I wasn't sure if it was a policy committee or a board committee item, but the letter was sent. It's dated December 4th. I don't know when it was received. I saw a copy yesterday when several of us from Millbrae attended the SFPUC meeting on items not on the agenda to talk about the impact and how our two communities could work together. Thank you.
That has been heard. I will defer to staff over the appropriateness or how that should be done.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
do think in a long-range plan for all of us in BAWSCA, it's Millbrae this time. I haven't dived into other big land holdings SFPUC has in other water agencies, but depending on their situation, it can be a huge financial impact. But I think the problem is in our enabling legislation that we do not have the ability to say, do you really need to do that project? It's going to impact, if not overall affordability, but definitely local affordability, and we should have a greater say in that. And I think that that's going to mean a legislative change. But over the holidays, I will be reading the enabling legislation and thinking about specific targeted legislation to give us some say over projects.
Okay.
We shouldn't have to pay 67% and have no say in what a project is.
Okay, appreciate that. And affordability is always a concern for all of us. Thank you so much. Well, I Hope, oh, yes, please,
Yeah,
Director Stevenson.
I know this is specific to Millbrae, but I had conversation with Assemblywoman Pappen about the same topic, and I think it's worth discussing in the context of affordability and policies. So I would echo the opportunity to put this on an agenda at the appropriate time, just to see what we learned from that and how we could apply as we go forward with the relationship with SFPUC.
Thank you. Affordability is obviously a big concern. I don't want to get in the middle of a land war, I'll be real honest. But from affordability, that might be an appropriate thing, and that has been heard. Thank you so much. I want to, oh, Director Schneider, was there something more? Or you're,
Sorry, no,
Okay.
Forgetting. I would just say happy holidays, everyone.
that's what, you just took the words out of my mouth. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful, safe rest of the month and year. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Take care.
Thank you,
And
Chair.
speaking from above Lourdes, thank you, staff, thank you for the remote presentation.
Yes. And this meeting is adjourned.